5,000 years ago, someone looked at a pile of clay and invented the future. They didn't know it at the time. They were just trying to count sheep. How many jars of grain went into the temple? How much beer was owed to the workers? Simple problems. But the solution they created would change everything. They invented writing. But that was just the beginning. In the swamps of southern Iraq, in a land called Sumer, humanity built its first cities. And in those cities they invented, well, almost everything. The wheel, the plow, the sailboat, mathematics, astronomy, literature, law, the 60-minute hour, the 360-degree circle, the concept of zero. If you've ever checked the time, read a story, signed a contract, or looked up at the stars and wondered what they meant, you're using ideas that began here, in the mud, in Sumer. This is the civilization that invented civilization itself, and it's time you knew their story. Last time, we left humanity on the threshold. Villages were growing, farming had taken hold, but one region was about to leap ahead of everyone else. The Greeks would later call it Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. The Tigris and the Euphrates, flowing down from the mountains of Turkey, through modern-day Iraq, into the Persian Gulf. This land had a problem, and that problem would force its people to become geniuses. The problem was this: almost no rain. The soil was incredibly fertile. River floods saw to that. But without rain, nothing would grow. You needed the rivers. But the rivers didn't care about your fields. They flooded when they wanted, not when you needed them. So the Sumerians did something unprecedented. They organized, thousands of people working together, digging canals that stretched for miles, building levees to control the floods, creating an irrigation network so complex it required full-time managers just to keep it running. You can't coordinate thousands of workers with spoken words alone. Someone needs to remember who worked which days. Someone needs to track which fields get water when. Someone needs to record who owes what to whom. The Sumerians needed to count. They needed to record. They needed to remember things beyond what any single human brain could hold. And so, around 3,400 BCE, in the city of Uruk, someone pressed a reed into wet clay, and writing was born. At first, it wasn't really writing, it was accounting. Little pictures representing things: a cow, a jar of grain, a fish, tallies and lists. But over centuries, something magical happened. The pictures became abstract. They started representing not just things, but sounds. And once you can write sounds, you can write anything: ideas, stories, laws, lies, love letters, curses against your enemies. For the first time in history, human thoughts could outlive the humans who thought them. By 3000 BCE, Uruk was the largest city the world had ever seen. 40,000 people, maybe more, packed inside its walls. Nothing like this had ever existed. For perspective, most humans throughout history had never seen more than a few hundred people in their entire lives. Imagine growing up in a village of 50, then walking into a city of 40,000. The noise, the smells, the strangers everywhere. It must have been overwhelming and terrifying and thrilling. At the heart of every Sumerian city stood the ziggurat, a stepped pyramid rising above the flat plain like a man-made mountain. These weren't tombs like the Egyptian pyramids. They were temples, stairways to heaven. The gods the Sumerians believed lived in the sky. The ziggurat brought them closer to earth. At the top, in a small shrine, the god of the city was said to literally dwell. Priests climbed those steps every day to feed the god, clothe the statue, sing to it. The god wasn't a symbol. The god was real, and the god owned everything. Here's something that might surprise you. The first economy was communist, sort of. The temple owned the land. The temple owned the grain. The temple employed the workers. You didn't work for yourself, you worked for the god. And in exchange, the temple fed you, clothed you, gave you beer. Lots of beer. The Sumerians loved beer. Workers were often paid in beer rations, and not weak beer either. Thick, nutritious, bred in a cup kind of beer. There were prayers to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. There were hymns about brewing. The Sumerians took their beer very seriously, but Uruk wasn't alone. Across Sumer, other cities were rising. Ur, Eridu, Lagash, Nippur, Kish, each one independent, each one with its own god, its own ziggurat, its own king. They traded with each other. They shared a language and a culture, but they also fought, constantly, for water rights, for land, for glory. For 3,000 years, these city-states would compete, cooperate, and conquer each other. It was like ancient Greece, centuries before Greece existed. The Sumerians didn't just build cities, they innovated relentlessly. Take the wheel. Seems obvious, right? Round things roll. But here's the thing. The wheel is actually really hard to invent. You don't just need the wheel, you need the axle. You need the wheel and axle to rotate together smoothly. You need to attach it to something useful. For most of human history, nobody figured this out. The Sumerians did. First for pottery, the potter's wheel, spinning clay into perfect shapes. Then for transport, carts that could carry grain, chariots that could carry warriors. The wheel changed everything, and someone in Sumer made it work. They looked up at the stars and saw patterns. The Sumerians were the first astronomers. They tracked the movements of the planets, which they saw as gods wandering through the heavens. They mapped the constellations. They predicted eclipses. They divided the sky into 12 sections, the zodiac. They gave us the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle. Why 60? Because 60 divides evenly by so many numbers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30. It's a mathematician's dream. We still use their system today. Every time you check the clock, thank Sumer. They built the world's first schools. They called them Iduba, tablet houses. Young boys would spend years learning to read and write cuneiform. And we know exactly what that was like, because they wrote about it. Complained about it, actually. We have tablets where students gripe about their teachers. My teacher caned me. The homework is too hard. I hate copying these boring lists. 5,000 years ago, kids were already complaining about school. Some things never change. And then they invented literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest great story ever written. A king who is 2/3 god and 1/3 human. His wild friend Enkidu, created from clay. Their adventures fighting monsters. Enkidu's death. Gilgamesh's grief and his quest for immortality. A great flood sent by the gods. A man who builds a boat and saves the animals. Sound familiar? This story is 1,000 years older than the Bible, and it asks the same questions we still ask. Why do we die? What makes life meaningful? How do we cope with losing the people we love? The Sumerians didn't just invent writing, they invented humanity's conversation with itself. For most of early Sumerian history, the temples ran everything. But slowly, a new figure emerged, the king. At first, kings were probably war leaders, temporary commanders elected during emergencies. But emergencies kept happening. Wars kept coming, and temporary became permanent. The legends speak of great kings from this era. Enmerkar of Uruk, who challenged the lord of distant Arata to contests of wisdom and invented writing to send his messages. His successor, Lugalbanda, a hero who walked with the gods, and Lugalbanda's son, the greatest legend of all, Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, builder of its mighty walls, 2/3 divine, 1/3 mortal. Was he real? Probably. There are king lists that include his name, but the man has been buried under the legend. In the stories, he's a tyrant at first, so harsh that the gods create Enkidu to challenge him. They fight, they become friends, they go on adventures, and when Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh breaks. He can't accept death. He travels to the end of the world, finds the immortal survivor of the Great Flood, and demands the secret of eternal life. He fails. He returns home, and he realizes that the only immortality available to mortals is what we build, what we create, what we leave behind. The walls of Uruk still stand. His name is still spoken. 5,000 years later, Gilgamesh is still alive, in the only way any of us can be. We know these early kings existed because we found their graves. In the 1920s, archaeologist Leonard Woolley excavated the royal tombs of Ur. What he found stunned the world. Gold, everywhere. Golden helmets, golden daggers, golden jewelry of stunning craftsmanship. Lyres decorated with bull heads of gold and lapis lazuli. These people weren't primitive. They were sophisticated, wealthy, and powerful beyond anything we'd imagined. But Woolley found something else. Bodies, dozens of them, servants, soldiers, musicians, buried alongside their rulers. Evidence suggests they drank poison willingly, following their king into death, into the afterlife. This was the dark side of Sumerian civilization. The kings weren't just powerful, they were seen as almost divine, and when they died, they took their courts with them. Civilization had brought wonders, but it had also invented new forms of horror. Despite the dark elements, Sumer gave us something essential: law. Not just rules, every society has those, but written law, recorded, consistent, applicable to everyone. We have tablets recording court cases, disputes over property, contracts gone wrong, accusations of wrongdoing. There were judges, there were witnesses, there was evidence. The idea that society should run on consistent written rules instead of the whims of whoever was strongest, that idea started here. It's the foundation of every legal system on Earth. They traded with the world. Sumerian merchants sailed down the Persian Gulf to a land they called Dilmun, probably modern Bahrain. They traded for copper from Magan, likely Oman. They imported lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, timber from Lebanon, gold from Egypt. They developed systems of credit, contracts, interest rates. Banking, primitive but real. 5,000 years ago, there was already a global economy, and Sumer was at its center. But for all their brilliance, the Sumerians had a fatal flaw. They couldn't stop fighting each other. Century after century, city fought city. Uruk against Kish, Lagash against Umma, Ur against everyone. They exhausted themselves in endless warfare. Their canals fell into disrepair. Their fields became salty from over-irrigation. And while they squabbled, others watched. To the north, Semitic-speaking peoples had been settling in Mesopotamia for generations. They'd adopted Sumerian culture, learned cuneiform, worshipped similar gods. But they weren't Sumerian, and one of them was about to change everything. His name was Sargon. According to legend, his mother was a priestess who couldn't keep him. She placed him in a basket of reeds and set him floating down the river. Sound familiar? Moses, Romulus, and Remus. The foundling hero is one of history's oldest stories, and it started with Sargon. From nothing, from a basket in the river, he would rise to become the most powerful man the world had ever seen. He wouldn't just conquer a city, he would conquer all of them, every Sumerian city-state. And then he'd keep going. Sumer invented civilization, writing, cities, law, literature, mathematics, astronomy, the wheel, the school, the contract, the love poem, the complaint about work. They asked the questions we still ask. They dreamed the dreams we still dream. And they made the mistakes we still make. They fought too much. They depleted their land, they built systems of power that crushed the people beneath them. But their innovations survived. Every time you write something down so you won't forget, you're doing what a Sumerian scribe did 5,000 years ago. Every time you check what time it is, you're using their number system. Every wheel that turns, every story that grips you, every law that protects you, it all traces back to the mud and reeds of southern Iraq, to people whose names we've mostly forgotten, but whose ideas became the foundation of everything. Next time, a man from nothing builds the world's first empire. Sargon of Akkad didn't just conquer Sumer. He conquered everything, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. He created something that had never existed before, an empire, a single ruler over many peoples. It would become the model for every empire that followed: Alexander, Rome, the Mongols, all walking the path Sargon cut.